You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest writer is Elva Green. Let's get started. When did you first discover your joy for writing?
Actually, I first discovered it when I was a child. Um, but I didn't consider myself to be a writer or an author. I didn't want to write a book and get it out there. I would just write things for myself, or I would join contests, writing contests. Um, and by the time I was in junior high, I was into my singing and I put my writing aside. Yeah.
Cool. So,
So
when did you get to the point of um, realizing writing was something you wanted to do, and when did you first realize you needed to write something down and publish it?
with when my grandson was born um, in 1989, he had learning difficulties. And I wanted to try and help him because he used to always tell me what he couldn't do. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I thought about the fact that I had a father who was very successful. My father was born in 1891 and he became very successful. And in those days, a black man had it very hard to become successful in America. So I decided to write a book for my grandson about my father so that he would know that no matter what the issues are, no matter what your hurdles, you can succeed. You can achieve whatever it is you want to do. So that started in like 1996, I think. Um, and at first, it was just about writing the book for him. But then as I was researching, I found so many other people who were in the entertainment business who had contributed so much to society, but nobody knew about them, nobody remembered them. Um, so then it got interesting, and that gave me the impetus to add stuff to the book to the biography that I wrote, my father's biography. Um, and then I was, that's my book. And then um, it was almost as though I was supposed to be doing this because even though I researched how to get my book published, I did all the research and then I was contacted by a publisher who said, I'd like to publish your book. And I said, cool. And after the book was published, he asked me to write another book. And, I was bitten by the bug. And I love research. I get a big kick out of looking things up. I've always been that way. Even as a child, I used to read the dictionary and the encyclopedia. Um, and so here I am. I didn't start out to be an author, but I found out I like it now. Mhm.
Well, most of the people I talk to who are authors did not start out wanting to be an author, so it is more common than we think.
Okay, good.
So, talk about Eddie Green. What is a little bit about the book?
Okay, Eddie. Let's see. Um, my mother was 30 years younger than Eddie. He was born in 1891. She was born in 1923. And by the time they got married in 1945, Eddie was already, in his 50s. Um, he told everyone he was born in 1896, but I found on his Army records that he was actually born in 1891. Um, so as I was growing up, my mom didn't really tell me a lot about Eddie, except that he was born into poverty. He hated where he lived in Baltimore in the slums, and he left home at 9 years old. He taught himself to read. He taught himself magic through books, and he went out into Baltimore and uh, called himself the boy magician. And that's how he went out and made money for himself. That's how he began his career. Um, and it evolved into vaudeville, burlesque, and on, radio and whatnot. And I don't know that my mom, she was in her 20s when they married, and I don't think she was really interested in what Eddie did in 1920 or 1918, before she was even born. Because by the time she got with Eddie, he was famous, he had money, and they did a lot of things. They traveled, he took her to Paris, they had parties, and I just don't think they spent a lot of time, though he did take her to Baltimore and showed her where he lived. Um, so 90% of what I learned about my father, I learned through writing this book. Mom told me that, he wrote a song in 1917, A Good Man is Hard to Find. Um, he was in a 1945 Paramount movie, Duffy's Tavern. She let me stay up one night when I was 8 and I got to see the movie. And that's basically all I knew about him until I started researching. Yeah.
That's amazing. I have so many questions for you now that I originally didn't intend to ask. But the first one, um, did you have what you call it? Did you know him? Know him? Like, was he in your life? When did you ever meet him?
Well, yeah. When I was a baby. Um, it, it's funny you should ask that because the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper took a picture of us in 1949. It was me, my mom was holding me, and Eddie. And we were getting on um, a train in LA on our first leg of our trip to go into Puerto Rico. It's the only picture that I have of the three of us. I just found it again and I posted it on Facebook, and it's an old, grainy copy. And one of my Facebook followers cleaned it up for me and just sent me a cleaned up picture of me, my mom, and my father. And I don't remember that. You know, we were on our way to going to Puerto Rico. I don't remember being on the ship. I don't remember coming back. I don't remember Eddie. I remember the house we lived in. Um, Mom told me, he spent as much time as he could with me. He was always with me on New Year's Eve. But Eddie was out a lot. He was out on the radio, uh, traveling. He traveled a lot from LA to New York. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my my nana, because they had a lot of parties. So I really don't remember Eddie. So when I wrote the book, it was like meeting my father, period. I only had one photo of him. I had one headshot of my father until I wrote this book.
Wow. So I'm assuming he's passed away. What age were you when that happened?
3.
Oh, okay. I see. I see. All right. So the other question I had for you was you said a publishing company contacted you to publish this book. How did they ever explain to you how they found you?
Yes, I decided to get on, I researched what a writer is supposed to do in order to get themselves out there. And they said, well, you got to get a platform. Okay, so I got a WordPress site. I got on Facebook. I joined a few groups. I went to a couple of conventions. At one of the conventions, I met a gentleman who had just finished a tome on the Duffy's Tavern radio program. And he, of course, mentioned my father because Eddie was a co-star in the show. And so he told me about a newsletter. And so I started corresponding with the people in the newsletter. And when I got ready to get some people to help me proof the book, this gentleman suggested I ask the people in the newsletter, and I did. And like 25 people said, sure, we'll help you. And the publisher was a member of that newsletter. And that's how he found me. And he said, I'd love to help you. Do you need a publisher? And it just happened to be the publisher that the gentleman that I had met previous suggested to me.
Oh,
Yeah. So of course I said yes right away because finding a publisher is difficult.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, there's nothing you can really know in life until you experience it. So, what were some of the things you learned during your publishing process that kind of took you off guard, or you were unaware that maybe that was something that um, you had to do as far as publishing? What were some of the obstacles you went through during this publishing process?
Well, I don't know that they were obstacles, but marketing. I thought I was just going to write a book, dedicated to my grandson, have this little book, and somehow, I don't know how, I thought it was going to get out there. And my publisher is a small publisher. Um, so he did some marketing. He even put me forth for an award, which I won an award in 2016 for Forward Indies Book Award. But I basically had to market myself and my book. And I knew absolutely nothing about marketing. And it's time consuming. Um, and like I said, I knew nothing about it. So I had to research. Well, what do I do now? How do I market a book? So I had to learn that. And that was just a big deal for me. I was like, no, that's not something I had in mind. I wound up, but I wound up liking it because I wound up doing presentations at libraries, presentations at Rotary clubs, um, at the LA Breakfast Club in Los Angeles. Yeah. Um, and I learned how to um, promote my book. I learned I even went to um, speech meetings where they teach you how to make speeches, I forget what it's called right now, so that I could stand up in front of an audience and, not wave my hands around and not say all the time. uh, so I had, I just had to learn it. I guess it could have been a, it could have been a problem if I hadn't been willing to do the research to get the book out there, because now I wanted people to read it. I wanted everybody to read it, people who were having a hard time in life and needed some inspiration. So that helped to get me up and get me out. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that's the number one thing most people say. I do when I do podcasts and they ask me, what advice do you have for writers? I say, well, first stop writing, get you a big account, and start saving lots of money and get you books on publicity, advertising, and marketing, and do that first. Because if you don't have that down, it doesn't matter how great you write, you're not going to get your book sold. And if people say, "Oh, I have a lot of friends," I'm like, "But if your friends don't read books, even if they're your friends, they're not gonna read your book because they just don't read."
Or
So if
your
you,
family?
your family too, if they're not readers, they're not gonna buy it to support you. You have to find readers, and that is the number one thing. And way back in the day, book publishing companies did all the work, but even the big publishing companies today want you to do a part of the marketing and
Ah,
advertising. They're expecting you to do
okay.
some of the work. So there's no matter how you publish your book, you need to know publicity, the difference between the three: publicity, advertising, and marketing, and you need to be a part of it. And if you don't know
Exactly.
it, don't even think about writing a book.
Exactly.
Definitely. So you said you've done a lot of research on what writers need to do. So I'm sure you've heard about book signings and book festivals and things of that nature. But unfortunately, for a whole full year and a half, writers have not been able to go out there and do book signings due to the pandemic. And so, how did that affect you, and what have you been doing to um, pivot, so to speak, during this pandemic?
My first book published in 2016. My publisher, Bear Manor Media, asked me to write another book right after that. And so I am doing a book on the TV sitcom The Jeffersons, which meant that I had to I had to research, which meant that I had to delve into, the internet. Um, I had to contact people. So I didn't really have to go anywhere. Um, I had to do a lot of emailing, um, locating people, guests who were on the Jeffersons, and I wound up, like, I was able to have an interview with Norman Lear, which was done via telephone. Most of the interviews were via telephone, except for one. I interviewed the lady who played Jenny in the Jeffersons, Jenny Willis, and she actually invited me to her hotel, but the pandemic hadn't really blown up then. Um, but by the time we had to, have masks and whatnot, I was basically homebound anyhow, and that was how I got in touch with people. Um, and it didn't actually it made me have to work on the book because I felt like I was stuck in the house, so I had to write. I had to do something, and so that's what I did. I just stayed here, spent a lot of time on the internet. I just went to the doctor and I've put on weight because of that. But I had to figure out how to balance that too, because I can sit down in my chair and focus on these books And on my blog, I also have a blog, and on staying in touch with my Twitter pals. And I won't get up until 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then I have to eat, and then I forget, oh, I got to wash clothes. So, the I've just been able to do what was necessary um, here where I am. I happen to be in a quiet place. I'm probably the loudest person here right now, but it's been good. It's helped me because from one book, I now have followers on Twitter that I correspond with. I have people who send me photos of my father, people who send me things. I'm holding them up. A fan sent me this cup from the Amos and Andy radio show in 1948.
Wow.
Um, so I correspond with these people. So there's always, I'm always busy doing something, and I don't necessarily have to be out and about.
Do you have a prospective date on when that book will be published about the Jeffersons? Are you not sure yet?
Oh, oh, Lord have mercy. My date passed. In my mind, I wanted the book out 4 months ago. My publisher has told me, there's no rush. He has been working on this Jefferson's book for almost 10 years. I'm actually the second person I'm actually putting the book into book form. He had other people gathering information. Um, and I've had to rewrite a lot of it. Um, so the publishing, I have to send in my second draft within the next month or so. And then, they have to edit and do whatnot. So hopefully by the end of this year, it will publish because they've also started me on another book for the TV program Maud from 1970s. Um, so it's coming along. It's coming along. I'm doing my best, and my publisher is so cool. Though he doesn't rush me. He thinks I'm doing a great job. I'm even marketing a book for Bear Manor. Um, I have a marketing services business. It's a business, but um, it's not like a LLC or anything like that. Um, but I think so. That also takes time away from finishing the Jeffersons book. Um, but I'm almost there, so I'm in my second draft, and pretty soon I'll have people proofreading it. So hopefully this year, maybe it'll be somebody's Christmas present.
Cool. So last question I have for you, for anyone out there who, we've already talked about marketing, of course, but for anyone out there who is still on the fence of publishing a book, it's in their mind, they have ideas, but for whatever reason, they've convinced themselves not to do it. Do you have any advice for them to encourage them to do it?
And I have a niece who's there. She's on the cusp, and she told me, she's emboldened now because I've done it at my age. And so, she's thinking about doing it. And I told her, just do it. If you think you have something to say, just start. Put it down on paper, but make sure that make sure you research what it is you want to write about. Get yourself an outline. Um, just realize that your book's maybe not going to just like blow up immediately. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take persistence, and if you can write, if you think you can write and you have something to say, then just, do it. Because if you don't do it now, who knows if you're going to be able to do it a week from now. Um, Life is the only reason I'm the age that I am as an author is because I'm still here. I didn't keep putting it off and putting it off. I'm just still here and I'm still writing. I'm still working. I'm still doing things. Um, so, I think, if you don't do it now, you probably never will, because it's easy to keep putting it off. So just decide that you're going to do it and be persistent and expect people are going to be helping you. That's the one thing I've found. Uh, People wanted to help me. They wanted to help me proof the book. They were so happy that I wrote this book about my father. They learned. A lot of people I found knew who Eddie was, but they didn't know his whole story, and they were just ecstatic. One man's wife wrote to me. He was ecstatic that I had written this book. So somebody out there wants to read whatever it is you have to say. You know, just do it. That's what I say.
Well, that is all the time we have for you today on The Ready Writer. I want to thank our guest, Elva Green, for stopping on by, and of course, you, the viewer, for watching. Have a great day. Have a great week.